All right, welcome everybody. My name is Dara Paoletti. I'm a member of the community team here at Flatiron School, and you are in the right place if you are here for tonight's Community Champion AMA panel. I've got a great panel of our student community champions here with me tonight that will introduce themselves in just a moment. While we're getting started and folks are joining, please feel free to jump into the chat, share your name, where you're located, and what discipline you're studying. If you are a current student, and if you are a prospective student, let us know what discipline you're most interested in. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with introductions. Andrew, do you want to go ahead and get us rolling? And we'll, like I said, we'll go in alphabetical order by first name if we can.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you everyone for investing your time and coming to hang out with us. So I'm super excited to share my perspective on things. My name is Andrew Julian. I'm located in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Right now, I am working as a high school computer science teacher. My background is in biology, so I don't really have that much of a competitive edge, just a little bit. My career change is hopefully to move into the tech field in some capacity. I think an ed tech company would be a great company to work for. I do really love teaching. It's just there are other interests of mine that I want to pursue as well. And since we only live once, it seems that it's only appropriate to invest that time and energy into doing what you want. So I would love to stay education akin, but move more into the software engineering technical side of things. Are we doing a different icebreaker analogy, like some other thing, like a fun fact?
Oh yeah, we didn't settle on that, did we? I think why don't we go with the one that was suggested about kind of where we're coming from and where we're moving to, which you already covered.
Oh, working ahead. Yes, no,
Awesome.
yeah, so to summarize, education field, traditional K-12 public high school, and then hopefully moving into some sort of educational technology hybrid role, specifically with software. So thank you.
I'm Brandon Tomecsko. I live in the Austin, Texas area. I've lived here for about 5-ish years, but I've lived in Texas for a majority of my life. I'm in the software engineering flex program right now. For me, like my biggest change really is I'm switching mostly from a customer service based role to now moving into like software engineering. I do have a bachelor's degree in public relations that I don't really use, which isn't a bad thing. People change their minds. I did also start coding while I was in college too, and I learned that I loved it there. But by the time I realized that, I was already a senior. And then pretty much the same icebreaker, transitioning from customer service to software engineering. Kind of don't know where I want to go with that. I'm learning to also code on the side like Java and everything, so I'm just testing the waters. I may end up wanting to go into like food tech or retail technology because that's where I've been with customer service roles and everything. But that's a little bit about me.
All right, I'll go next. Hi, I'm Christy Perozzi. I just graduated from the software engineering flex program. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. Yeah, I did the flex program, and before that, well, my background is in environmental science, and that's what I studied, and I worked in environmental consulting for a number of years. And then I quit my job when I had my first child. So I've been a stay-at-home mom for the past few years. So I'm, looking for something different to do as opposed to what I did before. And I thought that, doing a code boot camp would be a great way to have fresh skills when I'm, re-entering the job market, for the second time in my life. So that's where I'm at. I just graduated. I enjoy front-end development. I think I'm going to look for something in that area. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Louis Casanave. I use he, him pronouns. Thanks everyone who has listened to me introduce myself twice now. It's my enthusiasm for this panel. I live in Brooklyn, New York, and I have done a whole host of careers in my 10 years working. Most of it has been retail and food service, and I did not want to do any more of that once the pandemic hit. So I am in the data science flex program. And I am really looking forward to seeing what data science can do for good in the world.
Hey folks, I'm Sarah Indano. I went to the in-person New York City software engineering program and I graduated in June, and I am job hunting. It's been a little slow, but I'm getting married next month, so we're excited about that. Previous to the boot camp, I was a guide dog mobility instructor. So I trained guide dogs to lead people who are blind and low vision. And then I trained the teams, and that spurred on a huge passion for accessibility. So I'm hoping with whatever the next place I go to, that I can bring accessible practices and make sure that the many friends I've made from my time at the Seeing Eye will be able to use whatever I'm making. And so I'd love to fill an accessibility role, but I would also love to work for a BarkBox. So that's where I'm at. I love dogs.
Awesome, wonderful. Thank you all so much for those lovely introductions. And thank you, Brandon, for the timely reminder of what's happening in sort of the wider US community, at least at the moment, and even some tropical islands and countries to the south as well. Before we get started, just want to, because this is a community-based event, we obviously are thinking of folks in our community and other communities that have been affected by the hurricane and the storms that are happening, that have been happening over the last several days. So for those of you in our Flatiron community and the extended Flatiron community, just want to let you all know that our thoughts are with you. We hope that everybody is staying safe, and hopefully everybody will come through this storm, and everybody will be all right. So just want you to know that, on behalf of myself and the panel, that we are all thinking of you this evening as well, in the midst of this fun event that we're having here. So with community in mind, I thought I'd start us off with a community-based question. And the reason that this amazing panel of folks are here is that they have all been nominated and awarded the title of Community Champion here at Flatiron School. And our community champions are members of the student community here that really put forth a lot of energy and effort into the community here, helping out other students, starting events, welcoming new folks, leading their own events, just being a friendly face in Slack and in Zoom and in person to really be an active contributor to the community. So I just want to thank all of you, not only for being here tonight, but just for being such amazing members of the Flatiron School community. So little round of applause for all of you that are here. So to get us started, the first question I wanted to ask everybody is, what does it mean to you to be part of a community? And whoever wants to jump in and start can get us going.
I guess I'll go first. For me, community has like a lot of multi-dimensions to it, especially because I am mixed race. I have mixed Eurocentric, white Eurocentric within me, and I also have Mesoamerican, as I am Mexican American. When I was little, I was never Mexican enough for the Mexicans, and I was never white enough for the white group. But I always found myself admiring, at least on the Mexican side of my family, how much community was there. Like with my family and everything, you'd have them doing like the cooking and everything. So as a kid, seeing like that I was being sort of shunned because a lot of people didn't understand like the differences in dynamics back in the 90s versus now, it's a lot different. And I'm glad that I never like sort of let that be where it's like, I don't want to be around people or anything. I grew away from that. And then as an adult now, I realize how important that community that I saw as a kid is even more so as an adult, especially now with like COVID and everything happening. And then one of the other biggest perks that I see of it is I am white passing. So I use that to my advantage to also speak for people that no one will listen to, similar to how we've had various white musical artists. I think when like the Black Lives Matter movement was really kicking off, where they actually started giving their platform to Black creators and Black musicians so people can actually actively listen. And in those moments, that's where I'm like, this is where community, and especially white allies for those that are underrepresented, have an integral part in having people grow, like communities grow, people grow. But that's what it means for me. It's like you have people there to uplift you, you grow, and you evolve as the process goes.
I like the idea of kind of broadening the tent, for lack of a better term, to bring more people into your community. And as my primary role as a high school teacher, I feel like that's a little niche I can kind of give here. My classrooms are all very different in terms of socioeconomic status, race, just general nationalities. It's important, I think, in a community that realistically meets in person every day, that is oftentimes not made up of people who have actively chosen that specific community, to try to foster the idea that we, whoever that particular collection of we may be at that particular point, are able to work together, are able to support each other, are able to help each other kind of expand their comfort zones. And that, you know, none of the other things aside from we being the community that we establish, that's the attribute that we need to really be mindful of, and not necessarily ignore the items that make us individuals, but embrace those, but also kind of think about how we can support those people who are or with their particular uniqueness, support and foster that particular uniqueness by showing value and recognizing it, but also considering how they can contribute to helping you expand your social awareness, emotional awareness, and then also just broader global perspective. So I have found that specifically in classrooms, and I mean, we've all been in a classroom. That's the nice part about referencing education, or most of us have been at least. You can kind of empathize with the fact that, you know, there were classrooms that you were like, I don't want to be here, because that community and the culture of that particular group wasn't really benefiting anyone. And so as much as you can kind of rally around or build that culture or that community that you want, it can be a very uplifting, supportive, and just an incredible experience when all the pieces fall together. I've seen it like just work beautifully, and there's other times where like, oh yeah, I missed that opportunity, but there's always room for growth there. And that's, you know, every community is different, but that doesn't mean one is better than the other, which is, I think, fantastic.
One of the strengths or experiences that I brought with me to Flatiron School, and it's heavy on my mind right now, as Brandon was kind of discussing the intricacies of what an identity can mean and the intricacies of what an identity can bring to a community. Thank you, Brandon, for that. It got me thinking about my time. During the pandemic, I was the co-founder of The End is Queer, which is an LGBTQIA mutual aid group here in New York City. And we had something like 2,000 members during the height of the shutdown in New York City. And I knew absolutely nothing about how to make a mutual aid group during that time, but I knew that we should have one. I knew that there should be one, and it should be queer specific, and it should cover all of New York. And to me, what community means when I think about it in that context is a series of interdependent relationships. And what makes them strong is that we all kind of need each other. And what makes them thrive is that through feeding each other and through, well, literally feeding each other, as the case was during the pandemic, but through kind of fostering each other's ideas here at Flatiron, we're helping each other grow, and we're becoming more than what we would be independently. We're learning more than we would independently. And in the Flex program, I think this is perhaps even more important because it can be a bit challenging to connect with other students in the Flex program unless one is really proactive about it, which I highly encourage. That is the secret to success. So to me, when I think about community and when I think about Flatiron, I think about bringing your identity, and you don't need to be an expert in making community. As long as you try and make the community exist, the community will come and help its own existence. That's my experience.
Very much on the build it and they will come. I just want to say, you guys are all so eloquent. It's like an honor to listen to you guys talk, because that was awesome. But I just want to mark on that again, Lewis, like, if you create it, people will come to it, and the people who want to be there will bring this support that you may not have had before and you may never have had before, and kind of open your eyes to being like, oh, I'm sure that I can speak for a lot of us when I say you come into the Flatiron program and it's like, here I am, beginner again. I just started this and I don't know what I'm doing, and it's frustrating and sometimes really scary, and you're like, oh, you know, I quit my job for this. I quit my job for this. Like, did I make the right choice? And having a community of people who did choose to be there, in this case, for the support system that I had, like on the New York campus in particular, of people who were like, it's okay, like we are in this together, and who were there to build you up. Like when you find a community like that, it is something special, and it's something that is heartwarming almost, of people who are really genuinely invested in your success and for good reasons, and who want to be there for you. So I know you don't always find that in every community, but sometimes when you do build it and when you just say like, let's do it, let's make this, the right people come along and you're able to make something greater than the sum of its parts.
I'm reminded of when I had my first child, and I had also moved to another area at the same time. So I was, you know, very much alone and trying to, you know, navigate a very drastic life change, and I had quit my job, you know. So at that time, you know, I joined a community of a mother's center nearby, and you know, it was just very heartening to, you know, be around people who were in a similar situation, going through what for, you know, many people is a very scary time, and, you know, supporting each other. And you know, they always very much reinforce the idea of like being, like the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child, and being the village for one another. And whenever somebody had like a medical emergency, or like was going through a personal problem, or like financial difficulty, there were, you know, fundraising drives for baby supplies from mothers in the community. You know, it was very much being supportive. And I feel that, you know, in some ways, starting a new career is a similarly scary time for many people, especially people who, you know, rely on being the primary income provider, you know, either for just themselves or a family as a whole. And that can be quite scary. So I think, you know, in a similar way, it's important to have a community of people to, you know, encourage one another, and, you know, understand that we're all like feeling the same thing. We all understand, you know, like how it's scary and new and different, and just, you know, seeing other people going through that helps a lot.
Thank you all so much for sharing. I love how each of your answers kind of had its own sort of unique twist to it, but all of your answers also had some common threads running through them as well, which was really beautiful to hear. And some of you touched on this a little bit, but I'm curious, as you found yourself as a new student here at Flatiron School, what did you do to kind of either help yourself get involved in the community as a new student, and or maybe what's something that you did to contribute to the community?
I'll go. One thing that I did was I'm one of those that will constantly ask, like I just have that personality type where I will go seeking someone to either answer questions, like if I need help or something, I'll go searching because I understand, especially when it comes to the tech world. I've been working at like as a recruiting coordinator and everything. I know that there you have your extroverts, you have your introverts. I know this isn't an official term, but like ambiverts too, the ones that are like in between and everything. So sometimes you have to have those people that are gonna like push for like engagement or something else. And a lot of times it's not meant to be forced. It's just someone really wants help. They want that community. So that's one thing that I did. I also engaged to try to get like study groups set up and everything. Especially because like in the software engineering world, you do have to do like coding practices and everything when it comes to trying to get a job. You have to have like strong communication skills. Those are some of the things that they look for. So I try, like I have a study group now that I work with where I also provide them feedback of like their live coding and everything. And it's taken us a while to all of us get comfortable. And it kind of also goes back to like something I learned back in college from my diversity professor is like, you have to get comfortable with the idea of being uncomfortable. You're always going to be in situations where you're like, this is just making my skin crawl. But if you're like, you want to land this job, you want to get into that field or something, you're going to have to get comfortable with that. And that's why like community can be a very complex dynamic. You can have a small community, like you don't need to go and seek out like this large 400 size community. If you want to have like 4 people that you're close to, that's still a community and they still help you. And that's kind of like what the study group evolved into. It's like 3 or 4 of us and we're all just bouncing off of each other, answering questions, helping each other navigate and making sure that we're all being successful. Like that's something that we all try to do too, because none of us want to get left behind because then someone's just going to feel bad. So we take them with us. Even if they're dragging, you're coming with me one way or another, you're gonna pass. But that's the steps that I've taken to help like some of my peers and everything.
I think I don't think I mentioned this. I'm doing the online flex, and even though there's a Denver campus just right up the road from me, I think the flex has really provided me the integration opportunity in terms of kind of working with the community that's worked really well for my schedule. I think that's something to also consider. We all only have so much bandwidth to give, and I'm still in the classroom teaching, and then I'm doing my courses, and then I do want to get involved in the community. You can't, like, some of that has to overlap in some capacity. And so the nice part is the notion of being around in a digital space is sometimes a little more kind of harder to conceive, but there's like the water cooler, just a Zoom room that you can just go in there and kind of work. And so it's kind of like the digital open workspace. So if you want to potentially like cross paths with someone, that's kind of your kind of opportunity for other people to pop in and out who are also more than likely looking for that same kind of environment. There were times where I would attend open office hours, and just for I'm here. I don't really have any questions at the moment. I might, and the staff who are in there answering questions have always been very, very thoughtful. And then you get to also, if another student comes in with a question and you have the same question, you can then kind of collaborate on that, which I think is a good opportunity. And then Slack is a great way that's not a huge time investment to just throw out, answer someone's quick question if you happen to know the answer, or just kind of have it, kind of open when you're working in the event you need a break. I did some Pomodoro cycles just to keep me on track, which is like the 25-5 type situation. And so I would do my 25 minutes of work, and then I would just jump on Slack for 5 minutes and kind of cruise, maybe read a couple blogs, maybe do some stuff like that, just as a dedicated way for me to take a break from my studies, a calculated break from my studies, but also try to engage myself in the community in a way that I was comfortable with. So I think that in the Flex, you can kind of be as integrated as you want to be, but also kind of be as tactical as you want to be about, kind of interacting with the community. So that flexibility I do like.
Especially for those who aren't part of Flatiron yet, one of the great things that I love about Flatiron School is that there's a Slack that you'll all be invited to when you sign up, and there are channels for everything. And there are affinity groups, which is whatever, your identity is, be it like there's one for women, there's one for parents, there's one for different races, there's LGBT, there's, everything. And there's also people who are, starting their own channels for, things that they're interested in, things like that. And it just makes it so easy to
We always love it when kids join us on the Zoom calls. Kids,
Sorry about
pets.
that.
Oh,
Yeah.
no apologies needed.
So anyway, the Flatiron Slack makes it just really easy to get involved and find your group, whoever that may be. All right, I'll move on. Thank you.
So I probably had a little bit of a different experience because I was in person, and the New York City campus, the software engineering cohorts, when I was there, we sat at these like really long tables, and each cohort, like as you graduated through the weeks, you'd move a table further and the next cohort behind you would come in. And I felt really lucky. Well, let me back up. When I first signed up and I knew I was going to go to be in my cohort, I was like, will I be the only woman there? And I was really nervous about that. And I felt really lucky that when I got there were 6 other women in my cohort. But when our table moved up, the next cohort behind us, the woman that was in that cohort was the only woman there of her group. And I wound up asking if we could start women in tech mixers at the beginning of every phase, so which also is like free pizza, so it was easy to draw people into it. But it was really nice for us to talk to phases that were behind us and give them the encouragement of like, oh yeah, like I failed my first code challenge, but on the retake I passed, I made it up. Or some for people who failed their first code challenge and had to move back a phase for one reason or another, they were able to say like, it's not the end of the world, like you got this, it's okay. And also to just talk to the other people there and say like, I'm struggling with this, or I am struggling with the feelings of being like the other in this larger group of like, sometimes you have bros on campus and you're like, I am not a bro. That's not me. But it was good to have that community. And then within my cohort, we wound up having like these study sessions that we would stay on campus till like 7 or 8 p.m. at night, which was way after we were supposed to be there. Sorry, Flatiron. And we would be like Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia with the whiteboards with all of these lines pointed one way or another to say like, okay, I didn't understand this before, but if you follow here, that's how we get there. And having these like aha eureka moments with my classmates and seeing, like I said before, like I was so invested in their success and not just mine, and being like, we can do this together, and having that support system, that was like really awesome. And for me, really good to be on campus for, because I needed that personally, and I needed like that cheerleading behind me.
I want to kind of point out something that Sarah said that I think is super important. And here, this is also where I kind of want to take time to talk about something that Dara is particularly great at. Whatever you want to exist within Flatiron, I have found Flatiron to be highly receptive to and very empowering about. If I wanted to give a workshop about how to write a better technical blog, which I did, Flatiron was about it. They were like, yes, what can we do to make this work for you? When I wanted to have a meetup for before a recruiting event and use a Zoom room, Flatiron was like, yeah, let's make that happen, you know? And then we were all in the Zoom room getting each other hyped up for a recruiting event that Out in Tech was having. So it's really, really awesome that Flatiron is so flexible that they can really empower you to make the community events that you want to see. So that takes someone being proactive, that takes you being proactive, but they will help you make it happen.
I want to jump right back in on that and just say, like, all you have to do is ask. All I did to get the Women in Tech meetups to happen was to be the one that said, can we do this? And it really was no more work. Our community managers will jump right in and help set up whatever needs to be set up. So yes, snaps for that.
Thank you both for sharing your experiences with that. That makes my heart very happy, because as a community team, that's really what we strive for. It's your community. As the students here at Flatiron School, this is your community. And so our role is really to help support you and empower you to create the kind of community that you want to be a part of. So I'm delighted to hear that you all have had some positive experiences with that. Brandon, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Did you have something else to add?
I mean, I interrupted you. I like went straight there. I was just gonna say, like, piggybacking off of what they both said, is like, you do want to ask those questions. Like, it's gonna be nerve-wracking, like, especially if you're new or making a change, it's gonna be nerve-wracking. But the second that you make that change or like ask that question, it's just gonna be like a domino effect of you wanting to either ask more questions or you just get more comfortable. And in doing that, like, even if it's like an unofficial thing, it also helps you practice in the long run for other things too, like preparing for an interview indirectly by asking for help and everything. And it also helps you start establishing, like, how do I ask questions and everything, which are a big part of also learning and growing within your career change too.
Such a great point. Thank you so much for sharing that, Brandon. Okay, so I'm looking at the time, and you all know I have a ton more questions, but I also want to make sure that folks here, that maybe we can get in some audience questions. So if folks that are here with us have questions, please click on the Q&A button and add your question in there. I won't be able to get to all of them, but I'm hoping I'll be able to pick one or two before we wrap up. While folks are doing that, another question that I wanted to have maybe a couple of people on the panel answer, just for time's sake. So we're getting to the end of September, and as the folks on the panel know, the community team does sort of themes for each month. And our theme for September is failing forward. And so it's all about failing, making mistakes, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. With Brandon and you know, I know a couple of other folks on the panel have already sort of touched on. But I'd be curious to know from a couple of you, how did the student community support you to recognize that making mistakes is just part of the learning process when you're learning something new?
I personally really love this particular theme. Teaching computer science is really nice in that, unlike a lot of classes in your high school career or even your college career, mistakes are very valuable, and they are also the best way for you to really get good feedback on your level of understanding of the content. And the more important part of that is it happens a lot with very low risk, and for when you're learning. And I think the idea behind that is leaning into the idea as a mistake being a learning opportunity, not as something that indicates failure or, you know, something negative, I think is a perspective I really had to shift my particular perspective on when I started to learn to program. But I think it's also really good to like share that out and then think about how does that work kind of in other facets of your life. You know, where can I take a calculated risk in order to learn something, and whether that is putting yourself out there for jobs or even signing up for this program. You know what I mean? Like it's a good opportunity for you to kind of really put yourself out there and know that the feedback that you will get will be valuable as opposed to being something that like haunts you. And so just whether it is just having a bug in your code or whether it is just kind of getting towards the end of a project and not being happy with it, you get something to take away from that. You learn something, either validation that you did something right or an area for possible improvement. And I think that the idea of that is built into a lot of the Flatiron protocols and procedures for supporting students. Ask for a technical coach is that little button that'll be in the bottom of your learning management system. There are office hours. There are one-on-one meetings with your cohort lead. There are career services. There are community managers and community support on Slack. The acknowledgement that you will make mistakes and then a very structured protocols and procedures for supporting you is part of the proverbial DNA. And I think that shows that Flatiron recognizes and appreciates you stepping out of your comfort zone, taking a risk, because they know that they'll be able to be there and support you. So I just think by the structures alone, the little TC, ask a TC button in the corner, the office hours, all that sort of stuff, is that's built into the process, the learning process in and of itself, which I really appreciate.
I'll be quick because I'm more curious in what my other panelists have to say than what I already know I'm going to say. But I will say that the community at Flatiron has given me more empathy for my own mistakes. And what I mean by that is when I talk to other people about the mistakes they have made, which is very important. It's very important to get feedback on your work and to give active, compassionate, actionable feedback to other people's work, because that is a real life skill that we will use in our careers forward. During that process, I would never berate someone for making a mistake. I would never say, oh, you should be personally ashamed of yourself for making this mistake. This is you know, I can make a judgment on you based on this mistake. I would never do that. And having a community who likewise would never, you know, berate me or shame me for making a learner's mistake has been so valuable for me to approach my own mistakes with the same compassion that I would give someone else and to stop taking it personally. That is my best advice about mistakes in general. It's not about you, it's about the subject matter. So I think that community is really great for learning how to give compassion to oneself.
There's at least what I found in, sorry, Brandon, do you want to go ahead? Okay, at least what I found in software engineering is when you've been stuck on anything for a long time and you keep getting the same error message, there are a few better feelings other than actually getting it right than getting a new error message. And you're just like, oh, thank God something changed. And I figured something else out. So, you know, I think that is like my pinnacle of failing forward. It's like, well, at least we're making progress here. And I'm learning something. I know that didn't work. I know this still doesn't work, but whatever I try next, and whether it's 10 times next or 100 times next, like I will get there because I've gotten there before.
The other thing too, to add to like everyone's too, especially like from the software engineering perspective, I don't know about the other fields. When it comes to coding, you're going to have bugs. You're going to have various issues that come up, and you just got to be okay with that. The other thing too is, this is very notorious in the software engineering field that I know of. There's no right way to code. If you want to code something this way and it works, that's fine. You're learning to, and that's one of the things that I've had to learn to, like, I learned coding at my university, and then when I started Flatiron, I was like, oh, this is a different way to do JavaScript. And for a while, it was causing my head to spin, but then I was like, this is a lot easier than what I was doing. And so it's just getting comfortable with the idea that you're going to make mistakes. You're transitioning into a field. If you've never done coding before, it is fine. Something that I see some of my peers do is they can't, I understand their feeling. I have anxiety too, but they stress over the mistakes. And I will tell them, I'm like, all right, do the whole Wusa thing, do Hakuna Matata, everything, because your code's broken. Okay, let's dissect it. Like, that's one thing that I had a professor teach me. He was like, break it down. Okay, this works, this doesn't work. So start debugging. Like, they'll teach you about debugging and everything, or start using your console log. Or the other thing too is, like, I wear contacts and my contacts do not help me, and I have to like get up to my computer like this close because I missed a bracket somewhere. And you'll sit there and like after a while, like one of the things that I do is I follow on LinkedIn and Twitter like JavaScript developer, and they post memes like that where they're like, developer can't figure out error, has like a picture like this, and they're like, there's the missing bracket. And it's just humor. Like, if you want to find stuff like that to like add humor to your mistakes to make it easier for you, that's fine too.
Here's my shameless plug that we need some Flatiron branded debug rubber ducks. I'm just going to throw that one out there. That is a real thing. Talking to a rubber duck is they're the best listeners. I don't know if they hear me, but they at least listen very well. But it's just a tactic of reviewing your code. So it's yeah, I'll talk to an inanimate object, but it works.
I love that suggestion, Andrew. I think Flatiron branded rubber ducks would be super fun.
We should then get one really big one. Marketing will love this. And then, like, isn't there a big rubber duck that like float down rivers and stuff like that? I'm sure it's really, yeah. One of those two, I think, would be reasonable.
We'll add it to the list. We'll build it into the budget for next year. Awesome. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts about that. We have a couple of questions that have come in. Somebody is asking about approaching the job search, and I'm going to tweak their question a little bit since we're talking about community tonight. And I know we've got kind of a mixed groups of folks. Some folks are still working their way through the boot camp. Some folks have graduated. So I'd be curious to know, how has like your experience in the community here had an impact on how either you're thinking about approaching your job search if you're not quite at that place yet, or you are approaching your job search if that's where you are. And we'll maybe have just 2 or 3 folks jump in on that if you've got things that you feel strongly about sharing.
I'd love to hop in first. The Flatiron community is amazing. And like I said, I'm about 3 months into my job search right now. And one of my dream jobs is BarkBox, who's like a subscription service to dog toys, because I have a lot of dogs. And oftentimes your career coach will say, oh, reach out to a Flatiron alum, reach out to somebody who you can make a connection with. And there was a Flatiron alum that works at BarkBox. And this was not his first job out of Flatiron. He had worked a few. He has a mid-level role at a company that I'm really interested in. And I was like, well, this might get buried in LinkedIn, but I'd love to see, like, you got to shoot your shot. So I reached out to him and he was lovely. He set up a meeting with me. It was supposed to be 30 minutes. It turned into an hour and a half of just chatting. And what was your experience like? Like, what was Flatiron like for you? What was it like job searching after it? How did you get your second job after that? So, Flatiron really has an impact on a lot of people's lives. And so many people are willing to share in that wealth of knowledge that they've gotten from it. And again, like, support you after the fact and like pay it forward or pay it backwards in my case, and say, like, I work here now and I would love to have somebody to reach out. I would have loved to have somebody to reach out to. So I want to be that person for you now. And that's been really cool in my experience.
Anyone else have anything to add to Sarah's very thoughtful answer? We've got another question that came in the Q&A that I also want to make sure we get to as well.
I think I'm the deepest in my job search, which is why it's
Yeah.
coming like this right now.
Well, I appreciate you
I'm
so much
literally
for
having my first meeting with my counselor tomorrow, so I'm
Yay!
not far enough
That's so
in.
exciting, Christy. That's amazing.
Thank you.
That's
Thank
amazing.
you. Yeah, I really wish that, like, I was a week further ahead, because I feel like I would actually have some way to answer this question. But I really
No
love Sarah's
problem.
answer. That's so exciting that you were able to meet somebody that way.
Yeah,
I'm really
that's
looking
incredible.
forward to getting into that. Yeah.
I really
there's an-
appreciate that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go for it, Andrew.
Oh no, I just I wanted to reference that I really appreciate there's people that you will come across that are just perpetual cheerleaders. Shout out to a friend of mine who I met through here. His name is Joe. I know that sounds very generic, but anyway, he's in the periphery of the tech fields, and I, as a teacher, feel like I'm very far away from the tech fields. And so I will admit there's times where, like, oh man, I don't really know, and I'm thinking about like where I want to go with jobs, and he's just like, no, go, you gotta go, like, believe in yourself, like, you can do this, like. And he's like, oh, here's someone I found who was in the same boat as you, sends me like a LinkedIn, like, there, look, they're working for Amazon, like, like, and I think it's nice to have those people in there too, being your cheerleaders, because I'm someone who just is over analytical and over analytical when it comes to things, and it's nice to have someone to just like crush that skepticism, and I'm super appreciative of him just like essentially calling me out and be like, no, that's not the perspective you need, you can do this, there's evidence to support this, other people have done this, like, you got this, keep it rolling. So that's another instance where the community has just beat down a misconception that I had in the right way, at least for me. So I just wanted to, quick shout out to him, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that shout out, Andrew. That sounds like it's been an important, like, supportive relationship for you during your time here, which is so cool. So we had a question that came in that I see some folks have already typed an answer to, but I also want to make sure that we address it out loud and it gets recorded so that folks can also hear the answer to it. Somebody shared a question. I'm a retired pharmaceutical rep looking for a challenge and an opportunity to learn a completely new field. Wonder if that sounds familiar to any of you. Am I nuts, right? This is a question that comes up so much, particularly with new students or folks that are thinking about doing this boot camp. Is there room for older students like me in what appears to be a world of young people? I have my answer, but I'm curious to hear from a couple of you what your answers might be to that question.
I can answer that one real quick, or my version of the answer. No, you're not nuts. It is perfectly fine. Going in and learning something new and everything. You're taking the initiative to learn something, and that already speaks volumes in itself and everything. Is it gonna feel different? I don't know, like your age, I'm 30 and I'm in the program, and there are sometimes that I have peers that I engage with where they say certain jokes that go over my head, and those are the moments where I'm like, I don't think I'm in this age group anymore. But then I'm like, I make the same joke back, but from my age group, and they don't understand. So like, I'll return the favor to them as they did to me and just make jokes out of it. But I'm still doing the thing. I'm still coding. I'm still learning JavaScript, React, Ruby, and Rails because I want a job out of this. I want the money and everything that comes with it too. I'm like, as long as you can joke about it too, it's, in my opinion, if you're like both parties are joking about it, I see nothing wrong as long as you're striving for your personal goals.
I would love to hop in real quick and say yes to everything Brandon just said, and also say, when you start working at a new career path, whether it's here at Flatiron or anywhere, You don't instantly forget everything you learned in your career up until that point. You bring who you are, you bring your values, you bring your domain expertise, which is very, very valuable if you are in pharmaceuticals already looking to get into tech. You're going to bring a world of knowledge that other people in tech don't have. And I guess my main point is you don't stop being you when you decide to learn a new skill, and your experiences do not instantly poof. So don't worry in terms of whether or not this is realistic. Whether or not it's a risk you feel comfortable taking, that's a different question.
I'd like to jump in. I definitely agree with everything that Brandon and Lewis said. It is not crazy at all. It is, definitely, I think, a great idea. Like, I've explained my background, that I had a totally different career, and then I was a stay-at-home mom, and now I'm starting my second career in this. And so maybe it's a little bit different, but it's not too far different, I think. And, I think it's funny, Brandon gave the examples of meeting younger students who made jokes and references that went over his head, because earlier when we were chatting before this, Brandon was talking about his TikTok feed, and I'm like, I don't even have a TikTok feed. I'm 37, so it's just a matter of perspective. You're always gonna find somebody who is in a different place, and you're going to find people in a similar place. And I have seen, for a while there was somebody in the Slack, and I, didn't really know him personally, but I think there was a retired doctor, I want to say a podiatrist or something, who joined the program. So it is definitely not unheard of. We've seen people like this before. And, you're going to find your own group. I've, kind of just naturally gravitated towards meeting other people, and it all turns out that they're the same age group as me, late 30s, and, or around 40. So, and you could even start your own channel for, second careers or whatever. There are so many people from so many backgrounds that you'll find your group. So if what you're concerned about is being the only one, then I wouldn't worry about that. And what you're concerned about is, can you make it? I don't think being young has anything to do with that. So I think it's definitely a great idea.
One last thing to add, because Lewis brought it up too, is because I didn't see that part about the pharmaceutical thing. If you want to go into tech and you want to go into health tech and everything, that it having that perspective too is very beneficial. There are so many people that, I'm not saying you may want to do a startup, but some of the startups that have happened are people that have worked in those fields, and they're I have a better solution to this product or something that I can do in terms of coding, in terms of software use and everything. So having that knowledge base helps you a lot. It's a good way to think about it too is when you're working in customer service, you have those managers that get brought into the company but have never, let's say you're working at Starbucks, they've never brewed a cup of coffee in your life, but you have baristas that want to be managers and everything, and they eventually get to it. It's kind of like that. It's you have that knowledge experience, and you're going into a new field that you can carry that with you and use it to your advantage to build some of the projects that we have to do in Flatiron and everything. And it depends on each field. I work in the software engineering. I can't speak for data and the others, but yeah.
Well, you all summed up my answer, which is yes, it's totally doable, not nuts at all. So thank you all so much for sharing your thoughts on that. And I'm looking at the clock, and I don't know about you all, but this hour went by super fast. From my perspective, at least. So we may have to try to get together and do a part 2, because I feel like this has been an incredibly fun conversation. It's been I've learned a ton just listening to all of you share your thoughts and your experiences. Before we close out for the evening, I'm just going to put sort of a more open question out to the members of the panel, which is, before we close, do you have any sort of final thoughts that you want to leave with our audience about community, about your experience, about anything that we've already kind of talked about today before we wrap up?
I want to add very, very quickly, there is no generic success. You have to think about what your success will look like to you, And I have to think about what my success looks like to me. And comparing myself and my success to the success of others is like a really, really quick way to make myself miserable. So I would say when it comes to thinking about what amount of pay you should get for your job after Flatiron, what that job will look like after Flatiron, what your success will look like during the program. This is not that talk, but I would encourage you to make your own goals instead of comparing yourself to other people.
I just want to give just a plug for Flatiron as the over analytical being that I am. When looking at boot camps, I looked at all of them, not all of it. You know what I mean? Like you do the unnecessary due diligence of reading reviews, and you get into the dangerous world of people's opinions. And eventually,
was there a spreadsheet involved, Andrew? Because if it had been me, there would have been a spreadsheet.
There more than likely was, with cost and resources, and yeah, there was a lot of things. And when it really came down to it for me, just so that you can see this, it just is the one that felt right. And I can say that I'm in phase 4 of software engineering, and I'm completely happy with that particular decision. Are there other things that teach other languages and things like that? Sure. That wasn't really what kind of like made the decision for me. It was talking to the admissions crew, them always being available to answer all of my questions, and then the resources that were available for support within the program itself. As a teacher, seeing that what I would want my students to have, and knowing that that is also reflected in what the community of Flatiron has provided me, has really made me feel 100% confident in my decision. So I'm sure the other boot camps are great. This one felt right for me, and I wanted to make sure that on record, the omnipotent beings of the Zoom recorders know that I'm super happy with my decision. And so I also want to say thank you everyone who attended for your time. I know everyone's time is valuable, so I appreciate you guys spending that with us.
I just want to answer someone's question from the chat about like, do you need to go into like the boot camp with coding experience? No, you don't. If you're concerned about like not knowing, there are free resources all over the web that can help you at least prep. Plus, I know with the software engineering, we do pre-work before you start the program too. So you start learning a lot of the basics from the beginning. I will say pay attention to those, because those do also help you in like, especially the first phase of everything. But you don't have to come in with like any type of coding background. I had a very, very small coding background. Most of it was HTML and CSS, and then very low level JavaScript. So when I went in with just that, and I learned those like four years prior to me coming into this boot camp. So it was like a huge refresher for me. So just wanted to put that out there.
I don't know if the Flex program also has Feelings Fridays, but on campus, we had Feelings Fridays, and which was basically for us to come together as a cohort and express like what we were feeling. It sounds ridiculous. The first one felt ridiculous, but what came out of that was the first Feelings Fridays. We all sat around in a circle, and one after another went, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. I'm nervous about this. This was hard. This week was hard. Learning all of these new things was hard, and this transition is difficult. And by week 2, because we had kind of all gone, oh, like we really are in this together. We all chose to be here, and we all want to be here. And by the end of week 2, it was like, I've made some friends. I've met these people who are helping answer my questions and who are there for me. And we were able to come back and say, like, it's starting to click. And whether or not you have Feelings Fridays, your community at Flatiron is going through this with you, whether that is like in your cohort directly, or the cohorts in front of you or behind you, whatever phase that you're in, like the feelings that you feel when it's tough are shared amongst people, and the the highs of the successes are also shared amongst like the community that's here. And the same goes for when you graduate and you're watching people that you've worked with get jobs or be looking for jobs, which can be difficult too. But all that's to say, we're in it together. Like, I know that's very kind of campy of me, but there are a lot of people who are going through the same thing. And don't be afraid to reach out to somebody and be like, I'm having a hard time with this. Like, can you explain this differently to me? Or if somebody reaches out to you, don't be afraid. Be confident that you know what you're talking about because you've been working hard at this.
So in the Flex program, we didn't have Feelings Friday, not at least not that I know of, but I kind of love that idea. And I think that we should totally make that happen because that sounds like a really good idea. And we could, I don't know, even just like within our own
Feelings Friday
cohorts or
Slack
something.
channel.
Yes, there should be a Slack channel just for that. Like we could make one and
We'll make
like
it
we can do
happen.
that tonight.
Yeah, let's do it. We'll just get it started. Love it. Thank you all so much for those thoughts. I couldn't have said it better myself. I did not pay anybody to say these things. But what you all shared was just so wonderful and so heartfelt. And I just want to say thank you to everybody on the panel, Andrew, Brandon, Christy, Lewis, and Sarah, so much for sharing your time with us tonight. Really, really appreciate not only your time, but just your contributions to this conversation and for being so open and vulnerable about your own experiences. I know I really appreciated hearing about it. I can almost guarantee the folks that are here with us tonight also appreciated it. So thank you so much. And thank you also to our audience, the folks who have been hanging with us this last hour. Really appreciate you joining us and spending your time with us this evening and for the thoughtful questions that have come in. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them. And thank you all so much for being with us this evening and have a great rest of your night. Take care, everyone.